Thanks for joining us, and welcome back to the Watchman on the Wall podcast. Periodically, we'll bring you true stories of angelic encounters, heavenly visitations, near-death experiences, as well as modern-day prophecies that are relevant to us today. When we come back, we'll begin our next episode. Hello and welcome back to the Watchman on the Wall podcast. In a recent interview on the Daystar Network, Perry Stone shared his dreams and visions that he's had in the past for the United States as well as the world. We've had Perry Stone on this program before, and some of these are repeats for some of you that have listened. But I think you'll find that today he shares some more of his visions as well as his father's visions of the future of America. And I think you're going to find that this is quite fascinating. So without further ado, here is Perry Stone on the Daystar Network.
Hello, my friend. Joni, so good to see you. Always good to see you. What a great family. And I want to say to anybody watching, this is a great ministry. It's reaching the world, and it's having results every single minute.
Yes.
Not just every day. your programs are seeing many people saved.
Yeah.
Thank the Lord for that.
Well, you know, grab the book right there, Jonathan. The visions. These are visions I know that the Lord has showed you. We talked about earlier on Table Talk, but I wanted to talk on Ministry Now. Tell some that haven't come to pass, but maybe talk about a 9/11 vision that you didn't even know was going to be a 9/11 vision. In fact, when did you have that vision?
In 1996 in Brooksville, Florida.
So 96.
Yeah. Wow. And I want to tell this a little bit more in detail than what we've shared, because you and Marcus called me the day after 9/11, if you'll remember.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
All right. I was very tired. I went to lay down. I put my head on my Bible on the bed, and I'm telling you, immediately within, I say 5 minutes, I was walking up a street, full color, three-dimensional. And there was a wall in front, a huge wall. I climbed the wall, and as I did, I saw a beautiful cornfield. At the end of the field was a building that looked exactly like the World Trade Center. And
did you draw a picture, or did somebody?
No, there's I thought they put the one picture in the book, but there's several pictures in the book that do show this.
I think we have one of the pictures that you
could
had
be.
Actually someone draw exactly what you saw. There it is.
1999 is when that was drawn, Joni.
And it was so real to you.
Yeah, and I want to keep that picture up, because you see what looks like the Trade Center shrouded in black, but coming off of it were 5 gray tornadoes. And I told this on television. You remember, I told it on television.
Yeah.
Coke cans, computer paper were in these, and sparks were flying. And it was each one was getting ready to move into the cornfield and take out a row of corn. Retrospect. The wall I stood on was Wall Street, which was located near there. The corn was the economy that was going to be affected.
Wow.
The gray tornadoes was the grayish. Remember when the buildings collapsed, it produced that gray-looking tornado look?
Yeah.
And you had Trade Center 1 and 2, which are the towers. Then the 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7 that were affected. There's your 5 tornadoes. So 5 buildings along with the Trade Center. And I never saw a plane, but I do remember running down the sidewalk barefooted. When you're barefooted in a dream, it means you're not prepared for something. Because I had an outfit but no shoes. So I knew it was something that was going to be unexpected. We were not going to be prepared for it. But I screamed out, let's get to the cleft of the rock. We've got to get to the cleft of the rock. The rock, of course, is Christ. And I knew that what the Holy Spirit was saying was something is coming. Now here's the part that really messed with me. You ready? June 1996, the FBI later found out that Muhammad Atta and the others that were planning this were 30 miles from where I had the vision, looking into a small airport and learning how to fly.
Wow.
In other words, as I'm having the vision of what would happen 5 years later, the very men are in Florida, several of them I should say, are in Florida, and looking at a flight school. And it should have triggered somebody, because they came into the flight school saying, we don't want to learn how to land a plane, we just want to learn how to take off. Now, who just wants to get in a plane and take off and not learn to land? And I had a friend of mine, he happens to be Jewish, he lives in Israel, and he was at the airport that day and said, something is up with these men. Of course, you can't just report something if you don't have some evidence on it, of course.
Yeah.
And so that was probably the most dramatic moment. You and Marcus called me. Kenneth Copeland was on the set. And we talked about the corn was the economy. And, it affected millions of jobs, not only in New York.
And that was a Shemitah year?
Yes.
Which is also significant, right?
Very, very significant.
Yeah.
Blessings or judgments usually happen on Shemitah year cycles.
Which this is the Shemitah year.
Exactly. And look at what's happening. Let me tell you something else, and since we're on kind of this little theme here. Years ago, when Hillary Clinton, before she ran against President Trump, I had a vision, not a dream. And I was in a town, we were getting on a van, and we looked, and there was a straight road. And the road had an end to it at some point, but there was a straight road, right? This is really one of the most unusual that I've ever had. She was in an open field. There was no corn. She was standing in the field facing the direction where the van was coming. And never forget, she had on a completely yellow outfit, the jacket and the pantsuit, completely yellow. I had never seen her in that. And she was speaking, and as she's speaking, there are 3 tornadoes of equal size at the end of that field, and they start turning. And they're going to come toward her, but she doesn't see it. And as we drive by, I see her just speaking and speaking, but she doesn't know what's behind her that's coming. Then I transition to a city, and somehow there's a vote thing going on, and I see symbols in the heavens that represent states, and the state of Florida was one of them. So I wrote it down, and I even preached it once or twice. I said, I don't know what's going to happen. And then when you start looking at it, you had the Russian situation, you had Benghazi, and as a matter of fact, you had 3 major things that came within 12 months that did affect her. And so help me, if someone didn't send me the picture of her in the pantsuit. She actually had totally yellow on, because they heard me tell it.
Yeah.
And they said, oh, she's got an outfit. She just did a speech in it. So, God shows you visions, and one of the things that, if I can go ahead and flow with this a little bit, one of the reasons is God does nothing on a national, state level, or even sometimes in the body of Christ, the local level, unless he reveals it to someone what he is about to do.
Yeah.
And Amos says it this way, the Lord God does nothing except he reveals it to his servants, the prophets. Now, I don't consider myself a prophet. I just consider myself someone who has the ear to occasionally hear, and God uses that way. Old men will dream, young men will see visions. Some of these visions are a little older, and I'm having more dreams, so what does that tell you? You'll get it in a minute. Old men will dream.
That tells me that you're still young. Go ahead.
Okay, go ahead. Now, if I have a vision, I'm going to feel real good.
Yeah.
But I've seen these very, very, very strange things begin to take place. And so God began to give my father, and I'm going to give you a little bit of background. God began to give my father, talk about a visionary. This man could hear from God. He could look at people and tell you what sin they were in if they had not confessed it. And he would never publicly expose anybody, but he'd go to that person. And I have seen things that are like William Branham level, absolutely scary. When I grew up, Joni, I used to tell Marcus this. I said, Marcus, I can't go and do anything wrong because my dad sees it if I do. And Marcus would just laugh because it's true. He would see things. And he began to share some things with me that he saw that was coming. And we would write them down. I began to see numerous things, and I wrote them in a journal. And here's what happened, so people will understand why I finally put this in the book. The reason I did not share it is I try to be a positive person. I want to preach the coming. I want to preach the rapture. I want to tell them, yes, the tribulation's coming, but I want to give people kind of a hope to turn to the Lord, trust the Lord.
Right.
And these had places in them. I knew where I was. I knew where I was standing. One of them, for example, was years ago. I stood on the coast of Louisiana. I saw the ocean. I saw the oil rigs, oil rig platforms. And I saw one where a tornado started spinning on the platform and oil going everywhere. It then shifted to 5 things that would be affected. I saw trucks. I saw empty restaurants. I saw empty mom and pop shops, nobody going to them. And I saw 5 things that would be affected. And I realized something's going to happen off the coast of Louisiana. I called a pastor. You probably know Dino Rizzo, Brother Dino. They used to be at Healing Place Church. He was at Healing Place Church then. I said, Dino, you're going to have an oil rig problem off the coast of Louisiana, and y'all need to get ready for it. And 2 years later, if you'll remember, that rig exploded. The oil was pouring out from under the ground. They were calling it the worst disaster, and they were predicting all sorts of terrible things. And everything began shutting down in Louisiana exactly the way I saw it. So the Lord prepared him and his church. He actually prepared things and told me later, you know, we had food going on, we had water and different things of that nature. And we went to his church, and I had the original paper. I still have it. I should have brought it with me if I knew we were going to do the programs. But I have the original paper of the vision with the drawings on it. And I told the church, and I said, tonight, they're predicting this is a disaster that will go on for months or years. It will not. Tonight, we stop it in the Spirit. And we asked God to stop that because it was going to be just a total disaster for Florida, Alabama, the coastal areas, you know, Louisiana. And a man was in his bathtub. This is the story I was told 1 month later. And he put the plug in the tub, and he pulled it out, and he realized, oh, my goodness, we can stop that. And they plugged it, and it was the end of it.
We'll be right back with more of the visions of Perry Stone after this. Please join us on the Watchman News Network. It's a video news presentation of relevant stories dealing with end-time topics. Just subscribe to the Watchman on the Wall podcast on YouTube, and you will instantly have access to our latest WNN report. That's the Watchman News Network, exclusively found on YouTube. We return now with part 2 of our podcast with the visions of Perry Stone.
And so the thing I want to say is that I started looking at certain things that were very troubling. I know they're going to happen eventually. And the Lord spoke to me. It was probably last year about this time, because the book was finished in October. He said, now, if I tell you something and I give you an actual vision, you're supposed to be a watchman with it. And I said, Lord, but some of these things, I don't want to tell people a tsunami is going to hit a certain city in America. I've seen it 3 times, but I don't want to have to tell the city. That depresses me to tell people. And he said, you're a watchman, and I'm going to hold you accountable. If it comes, if you speak it, I'll tell people what to do. I'll protect them. I'll tell them how to get out of the way. But he said, if you don't tell it, what if they're caught off guard? And I'm telling you, it scared me. And so we got together, and I got Dad's old dreams, and I had a journal called a dream journal, vision journal. And I got together, and I put it together of what we believe was going to happen. Now, the weirdest thing was, and I'm telling you, this was bizarre. Russia had not yet made their major move. But when that happened, 3 things began to take place that are in the book. And I'm not going to go into detail of these because we'd run out of time immediately. Number 1 is food shortages. When they began to talk about that the Black Sea was locked up and you couldn't get things in and out, the fertilizer that comes from Russia and the Ukraine that comes to the United States, our fertilizer prices have gone up so high that in Tennessee, they're not farming. They're not trying to, they can't farm. They can't afford to farm and sell because it's gone up and they can't get it. All right, that's point 1. And that was my dad's dream of a food shortage in America before he ever passed away. And again, that'll be part of the story you'll read. The second thing was a nuclear tower. Now, Pam will remember this from many years ago.
Pam is your lovely wife.
Yes, she's over there in the audience, my lovely dear wife. There were nuclear towers, cooling towers, and I saw them and I looked, and they started spinning like a tornado. When they did, I'm in a field, and the field can represent the world in the parables of the Bible. And I see the bulls. I mean, they look like Texas Longhorns. They are bulls, and they are running massively. I see what they look like. I see the type of skin they have. And all of a sudden, I realize that's the stock market. It is going under because of what's happening at these towers. Wow. Well, and again, I'm abbreviating it quite a bit just to give you the basics. Well, all of a sudden, we start hearing that there is a nuclear power plant in the Ukraine, that Putin is even threatening to do something there to cause a nuclear disaster. Now, that sounds like something in a movie that would never happen, but who knows? But I do know there's something connected. I also think it could be a Israeli attack on Iran on their nuclear program, and that would cause problems as well, right?
Right.
Then
Because they're not going to let them have a weapon.
No, you cannot afford to let them.
Because they promised to destroy Israel if they get one.
Well, and the United States. I mean, we're the big Satan. They call Israel the little Satan.
Yeah.
And you can't allow that to happen.
And wasn't there some kind of drill they just did?
Oh, I think they're always doing
like
drills.
Chariots of Fire, I think it was called.
Yeah.
In preparation for some of the things we're talking about.
Yeah, and Israel does drills when you don't know they're doing drills.
They're always doing drills.
They're always doing.
Yeah.
When you hear all these planes flying all over the place, you know they're practicing for something.
Yeah.
And so that was something. Now,
so the farming, I mean, the food shortage,
the spinning towers,
and the nuclear, and then what was the third
and
one?
the biggest one. And how much time do I have? Because I don't want to run out of time.
You got plenty of time.
Do I?
Yeah.
Joni says we have plenty of time, ladies and gentlemen. Y'all heard it. All in the studio heard it. Okay.
That's right.
The most bizarre thing that ever happened to my family, me or my father, period, was in Troutman, North Carolina. And look, my hair stands up every time I talk about this. It just gives me that, you know. He was asleep in the bed, pastoring a small church there, and a man stood in the doorway about 3 a.m. and said, Reverend Stone. And he woke up, but he thinks he's dreaming, or maybe he's seeing a vision. He said, would you please give me a few moments to talk to you? I've been sent with a message. And Dad said, okay, just a minute, if you wait out in the little area there, which was the living room. So Dad put his robe on. He thought, boy, this is strange. So once again, he thinks maybe I'm just having a vision or something. So he saw a man in a suit at 3 a.m. And he said, I can't describe him in detail. It's a little bit dark in the room, but I can see him. So I walk to my office. He follows me. He stands outside the door and talks to me without coming in the office. He stands up. Dad said, I sit down. I take a piece of paper. He said, I want you to write, the Soviet nuclear submarine services will eventually strike the United States of America. This man goes into the most vivid detail of the type of weapon, the submarines, where they are, how far they are, how they are hidden in barrier reefs, how that they take Russian shrimp trawlers and put them over these areas. The subs get under there and they surface, and those in the sub dress casual and get on boats and do R&R in certain islands of the Caribbean. Because they think they're they're fishermen. He also gave the code name, which I'm not going to give on national news. I said national. This is national news in a different way. But anyway.
On the national good news.
Yeah, national good news. The good news, the real news.
Yeah.
And so he then described to him the cities they were going to hit. There'd be 4 major cities. And what they were going to do, they believed, this is what the man said, 40 years ago this year. And he said it would be a Russian attack, but he said they believe that the United States administration is so weak. Now think about that 40 years ago.
Yeah, wow.
That they will capitulate. They do not want a nuclear war. They do not they won't do it. They were not going to go to war. So we will sign a contract with them and say we can never let this happen again. So they're believing the United States will capitulate because they want the farmland in the United States. And
what about Bill Gates buying all the farmland?
Well, it's interesting. It's not just farmland; it's the water too.
Buying the water.
There's another man, not Bill. Now he may be, but there's another man that I won't name that they've already told me that in the Midwest, every aquifer he's getting a hold of it. He's buying the property where there's an aquifer. The point is, they know what's coming, and anyone who's wealthy in the billionaire level that knows what's coming, if you've noticed, they put their money where it will go 2, 3, 4 years from now. And they know that the food situation is going to be serious. All it would take, for example, is the new Madrid fault line, and you cut off everything from the food supplies of the Midwest and West to the East Coast.
So you're saying the submarine thing hasn't happened yet?
The man said to my dad, there's one man in Washington, D.C., I want you to tell everything I've told you. And again, I've never felt free to release the man. Dad would never let me mention the man's name. And this is 40 years ago. And he said, write him a letter. He'll be the only person that will believe that I've talked to you. And he said, but who are you? He said, that's not important. So my dad said, as he wrote I have the original paper that Dad wrote this on.
Wow.
When he wrote it down, my dad started weeping, just convulsively. And he went up to find this man, and every door was locked in the house, and he wasn't there. And one of the things he did say was that Russian students had come to the United States, to the universities, and had taken the maps, the sea maps of the sea lanes and all the information related to some of our universities, and photographed them, and that's how they knew exactly where to go, how deep it was, where they were located was from the maps that the students had taken.
We'll be right back with more of Perry Stone and his visions right after this. Hello again, this is The Watchman. Please join us each week for an exciting and inspirational podcast dealing with angel encounters, heavenly visitations, near-death experiences, as well as modern-day prophecies that are relevant to us today. So tune in each week and share it with your friends. After all, they could use a little inspiration in their life, too. That's the Watchman on the Wall podcast, and now you can find us on YouTube. We return now with the conclusion of the visions of Perry Stone.
My point is, I had someone tell me, I cannot give names, places, identity, or the department they're with, but they did visit me and they did say to me, we're very concerned, and we're talking about now this year, we're very concerned about the winter in Europe, the way it's going. We're concerned also about Russia and their winter as well under the sanctions. Yeah. Because if there's an attack on the United States, and I want to tell you what they said to me, it would be New York City, and that would be the main city that would be attacked, which is considered the economic center of the United States. And it would be sometime this winter. Yeah. And this is a person who tracks things. And again, not classified. No one ever gives out classified information.
And so a lot of the tragedies, I mean, there have been a lot of things that have happened this year.
Yes.
Here in America and around the world.
Totally.
Disappointing, yes. Like huge losses for America with the present administration. And we need to pray for all administrations. So I'm not just saying the truth is the truth concerning that. But a lot of the things that would happen in Shemitah would be like around November, wouldn't it? And why is that? Is that the end of it?
Yeah, I think now, right now at the time of our taping, we're in the seasons of Teshuvah, which is the 40 days of Teshuvah, of repenting and turning, making things right, telling people, may your name be inscribed in the book of life.
So Roe v. Wade would be one point of repentance for America.
Yes.
Because of what happened.
Anything that we're doing, Christians should know this, anything that we're doing, this is the season where Moses went to the mountain, came down after 40 days, broke the tablets, went back up, and God spared the nation because of his intercession.
Right.
So that's the season we're in now, that extra 40 days. Now, from trumpets to the Day of Atonement, it's called the Days of Awe, and that's when devout Jewish people have taught for years that God makes decisions for the next year. And that's why you always see things start happening after the Day of Atonement.
Always happens in my life.
Me too.
Right?
My biggest breakthroughs happen at this season.
Same.
Isn't that true?
Absolutely.
And then you get to
I told Rebecca, I'm like, get ready because it's coming, because it happens every year.
And we get our greatest blessings, Joni, in this season, but then we start seeing anything that is following up in the spirit happen.
Okay, what else is coming? Let's talk about what's coming. And also, I know that you had a vision about through the television lens.
Oh,
through the camera lens, there'd be revival.
That's the big one.
That's a big one for Daystar, right?
Yes, and before COVID. Okay. I'll go through this real quick. I'm standing at our little prayer center in Omega Center International, little room, looking at the camera, and God tells me, before COVID, revival's going to come through the lens of a camera. I got excited. I told everybody I had no idea what it meant. A few months later, guess what happens? Every church has to go and do camera internet with no congregation, some for a year.
Yeah.
I got a call from a very large nation. I won't tell where it is.
It's in the Middle East, right?
Yeah. And they said, we want to knock on doors, invite people to hear an American preacher give them a message, and we're going to put up a big screen. And you sit behind a camera. And when they said it, I went, oh my goodness. We've had 100,000 people saved in 2 years doing these about every other.
Wow, praise God.
From one country. Just they interpret while I preach, and then I give an altar call and baptism of the Holy Spirit and healing. And so this is going to become more common. And see, I don't have to fly over there, go through security, get security to take care. You know how that goes.
It's just like we're sitting here and we're
going
reaching
around the world.
whole world.
Yeah.
And we can allow through that lens, the Spirit of God can jump right into where they are.
And just so they'll know, we have talked to Daystar and Joni about doing some Midwest meetings in auditoriums, and the Daystar Singers coming. So those of you that live in the West and Midwest, and you need to keep that in mind, because we're going to do some meetings like Marcus used to love to do those.
Yes.
And that's something I've felt the Lord spoke to me.
What one state are we definitely going to do?
I think we're looking at doing Utah, in Sandy, Utah in July. And we're working on booking that.
So people can look at that on your website and see what's coming. Okay, so talk about what you saw that hasn't happened.
Well, there's actually a series of things. I think the thing that stirs me the most, though, honestly, is the visions of the tsunamis, because these are so clear in every dream.
And when did you have these, Perry?
Oh, for years. Now this has been going on for 5 years.
Okay.
And I had the most recent one about a month ago, but I will kind of give you. Let's just look at one of them. In several of them, I'm in a building, and then I look out. Like an ocean area or a water area. Some of it's not an ocean, it's an inlet near an ocean, where water really comes in. And I see a massive wave coming, massive. And then in the other ones, I'm in Baltimore, Maryland, and I'll just tell where it was. And I'm in a house, but the tsunami's not coming in through the wave hitting. The wave has come in, and now it's filling up the water and causing the water in the inlets to get high. And I remember 3 things. One, I see the water coming and I know what's happening and I scream it out, a tsunami. Number 2, I'm always saying, get to the highest part of the house, but grab food and water. In several of the dreams, I'm actually going to the bathtub and the sink, and this is important to hear this if this ever happens, and I turn the water on immediately to fill the tub and the sink up with water, because once the pipes break, the water will become, you can't drink it. And if you don't have bottled water, you're in trouble. So you fill those up as soon as you can, as soon as you see it coming, and that's what I did. And then we were grabbing and just throwing snacks and fruit and anything that we knew that we could eat, because I felt like that there would be damage to where you would not be able to get out in the roads like, you normally would. And
so you think this was an actual tsunami or some type of spiritual tsunami?
Rhonda Davis asked me the same question.
Of course she did. Me and Rhonda Davis
you and her and Pam think alike. and that question has come up. I don't, because I know the fear it involved and the fear on the people. And then I saw bodies. And this one I saw was, I'm not going to name the state, I'm just not going to do that, but it was so huge that people weren't paying attention. The water receded. Now, let me just give you some advice. This is practical. If you're at a beach, and all of a sudden you see the water going out, don't stand there and say, wow, that's crazy. It's a tsunami coming. And it might not be a foot, 2 or 3 feet. It may be big. But get as fast as you can to the highest building you can get into. If like you're at a duplex, go to the 2nd story. If you're in a hotel, go up, And
so I'm thinking Baltimore, Maryland, like that's really close to like Washington, D.C.
Very, very close.
Yeah.
But this one was weird because I knew the house I was in, and I knew it's off the water.
Yeah.
But the tsunami wave didn't hit the house. What it did, it brought the water in, and the water was coming into the street just higher and higher. And that's when I said, let's get to the 2nd story. I do know this, and I'm going to give you a final word here, that when I was at the camp meeting and the Roe v. Wade was overturned, the Lord gave the strongest prophetic word. I haven't had this happen to me in years. And here's what he said. And I'm going to paraphrase it. This is the opportunity for America to turn. This is the opportunity for his people and others to do the right thing. If they try to take this law of protecting babies and overturn it, then that's when the tsunamis are going to start hitting.
Hello again, this is The Watchman. Please join us on our new video channel called Encounters from Beyond the Veil. It's the same exciting content as our audio podcast, but in a shorter, but yet a video format. Also, please subscribe so you won't miss any of our episodes. That's Encounters from Beyond the Veil, exclusively found on YouTube. Well, thanks again for listening. And if you enjoyed this episode, please share it with your friends. Any comments or suggestions you may have, you can send to the Watchman on the Wall 2020 at gmail.com. We encourage you to subscribe so you'll always be notified of our future episodes. Well, thanks again, and we'll see you next time on the Watchman on the Wall podcast.